My newly discovered biological son asked me to prove he mattered by excluding the boy I had raised for 11 years, and called him, not my real son. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood him. Micah stood across from me at the kitchen counter, showing me photographs of a lakeside campground on his phone. There were small cabins beneath the trees, fishing docks, hiking trails, and fire pits near the water. He had been nervous when he suggested the trip. "So, what do you think?" he asked. "It looks great." His shoulders relaxed. "We could go for a weekend. You, me, and Blake." The idea immediately appealed to me. Since learning 4 months earlier that Micah was my biological son, most of our time together had been spent talking about DNA results, hidden truths, and the 18 years we had lost. A camping trip sounded normal. It could be something new between us instead of another conversation about everything that had happened before we met. "Nolan will love this place," I said. Micah's smile disappeared. "Nolan? Yeah. If we're taking a trip with the boys, he'll want to come." Micah locked his phone and placed it face down on the counter. "I was thinking it could just be you, Blake, and me." I waited for an explanation. "Why wouldn't Nolan come? He doesn't have to be included in everything." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. My wife, Violet, was upstairs helping our 11-year-old daughter, Daisy, with homework. Blake was out with friends, and Nolan had driven to the grocery store. Micah and I were alone, but I still lowered my voice. "If you want time alone with me, we can arrange that. I'd like it." "But you invited Blake because you wanted a trip with your brothers." "With my brother," he corrected. "Nolan is your brother too. He isn't related to me. He is part of this family." Micah looked away. "I just wanted one weekend with my actual family. Nolan is my family. You know what I mean?" "No. I don't." His jaw tightened. "I mean your real sons. Blake and me. Nolan is my son. He's your friend's son. He became my son when he was 7. But he isn't biologically yours. That doesn't make him less mine." Micah gave a bitter laugh. "That's easy for you to say. What is that supposed to mean?" "It means he got everything." I stared at him. "What did he get?" "You." He pushed the phone away. "He grew up in your house. He had birthdays, holidays, school events, and family trips. He got to call you Dad, and he isn't even your real son." I had spent 11 years making sure Nolan never felt temporary. I had packed his lunches, attended his school meetings, taught him how to drive, and waited awake when he missed curfew. I knew which foods he hated, which movies made him cry, and how quiet he became around the anniversary of his biological father's death. There was no version of my life in which he was anything less than my child. "If Nolan isn't invited," I said, "the trip isn't happening." Micah stared at me. "You'd cancel it for him?" "I'd cancel any family trip that depends on excluding one of my children." His eyes filled, but his expression hardened. "You love him more than you love me." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. This isn't a competition." "It is to me." He picked up his phone. "One of us had you for 11 years. The other didn't even know your name." Then he walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to shake the photographs hanging in the hallway. One of them showed Nolan standing between Blake and Daisy, his arms around both of them. Violet and I stood behind them, laughing because Nolan had made a joke just before the picture was taken. Micah had stared at that photograph during his first visit to our home. At the time, I thought he was studying my face. Now I understood that he had probably been looking at Nolan. Nolan came into our lives permanently when he was 7. His biological father, Henry, had been my closest friend since we were teenagers. Calling him my friend never seemed enough. He was closer to a brother than anyone I had known. Henry was there when Blake was born. When Violet and I separated 6 weeks later, he was the person who stopped me from letting anger ruin my relationship with her. He never told me what I wanted to hear. He reminded me that whatever happened between Violet and me, Blake still needed both of us. Henry raised Nolan alone. The reasons behind that belonged to Nolan, and I never shared them without his permission. What mattered was that Henry loved his son completely. Then Henry died unexpectedly. I still remember the hospital corridor. The doctor spoke in a quiet voice while I stared at the floor, unable to look at anyone. Nolan sat at the end of the hallway in a plastic chair, swinging his legs because his feet did not reach the ground. He kept asking when his father would wake up. No one knew how to answer him. Violet and I did not become Nolan's guardians through one dramatic promise. There were meetings, legal paperwork, family discussions, and sleepless nights when we questioned whether we could give a grieving child everything he needed. But we never questioned whether we wanted him. Henry had trusted us. Nolan already knew our home. He had spent weekends with Blake, eaten breakfast at our table, and fallen asleep on our couch during movie nights. The first night he stayed with us permanently, Violet made pasta because it was one of the few meals he usually ate without complaining. He barely touched it. After dinner, he stood in the doorway of the bedroom we had prepared and stared at the bed. "You don't have to sleep yet," I told him. He nodded but did not move. "Do I have to call you Dad now?" The question caught me off guard. "No. Will you be mad if I don't?" "Never." He looked down at his shoes. "My dad is still my dad." "I know." Even at 7, Nolan needed to be certain that loving us would not mean betraying Henry. I crouched in front of him. "No one is replacing your father. Violet and I are going to take care of you. That's all you need to worry about tonight." Nolan did not call me Dad then. He first called me Dad almost 2 years later. I picked him up from school after another student mocked him for not having parents. Nolan climbed into the car with a split lip, dropped his backpack on the floor, and stared through the passenger window. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" I asked. "No." "Do I need to speak to the school?" "No." "Are you hurt anywhere else?" He wiped his face with his sleeve. "Dad, can we just go home?" He said it so naturally that I almost missed it. I did not point it out. I did not want to embarrass him or make the word feel like a commitment he could never reconsider. I drove us home, went into the bathroom, closed the door, and cried where he could not see me. Nolan was never a responsibility I inherited or someone else's child occupying a spare bedroom. He was my son. Violet and I had our own complicated history before Nolan joined our family. We separated shortly after Blake was born. We were young, exhausted, and unprepared for the pressure of caring for a newborn. I stayed involved with Blake. I attended appointments, helped financially, and spent as much time with him as I could. But Violet and I lived separate lives for almost a year. When Blake was around 4 months old, I met a woman named Julia. We spent time together several times, but we were never a couple. She never told me she was married. Then she stopped contacting me. I assumed that was the end of it. Violet and I eventually repaired our relationship. We learned how to disagree without treating every argument like the end. We married, built a stable home, became Nolan's guardians, and later had Daisy. For almost 19 years, I believed I had 3 children. Then I received a message from a stranger. His name was Micah. The message was careful and formal. He explained that he had taken an ancestry test after turning 18. The results showed that the man who had raised him could not be his biological father. Then he matched with me. Blake had given me one of those ancestry kits as a birthday gift several years earlier. I took the test, glanced at the results, and forgot about it. Micah had not. His birth date matched the period when Julia and I had known each other. His mother's name was Julia. He included a photograph. I saw my own eyes looking back at me. I was sitting in my car when I read the message. I remained there for nearly an hour while people walked past my windshield. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Then I understood what it meant. I had missed his entire childhood without knowing it was happening. I had not abandoned him, but that did not make the loss easier to accept. When I told Violet, she sat across from me at the kitchen table and turned pale. "Are you sure?" she asked. "The dates match. And the test? It identifies us as parent and child." She read the message twice. I expected anger. Julia and I had been together while Violet and I were separated, but learning that Julia had been married made the situation uglier than either of us had understood. Violet finally looked up. "Does he know you had no idea?" I told him. "What does he want?" "I think he wants to meet." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Then meet him." Violet was shocked, but she never treated Micah like an intrusion. I met him at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I arrived 30 minutes early and looked up every time the door opened. Then a young man entered wearing a gray sweatshirt. He scanned the room with the same nervous expression I saw in the mirror whenever I was trying to hide my anxiety. He spotted me. Neither of us moved for a second. Then he approached the table. "Adrian? Micah?" He nodded. I stood, unsure whether to shake his hand or hug him. He held out his hand. The handshake lasted too long because neither of us knew how to end it. Micah sat across from me and wrapped both hands around a coffee he barely touched. I'm sorry, I said. He frowned. For what? For not being there. You didn't know. I still missed it. His eyes dropped to the table. The man who raised me still thinks I'm his. I did not know how to respond. Micah explained that Julia admitted the truth only after he confronted her with the DNA results. Her husband had raised Micah believing he was his biological child. Micah did not know how much to tell him. In a matter of days he had found one father and become terrified of losing another. That was when I realized this would not be the joyful reunion people imagined when they heard about surprise DNA matches. Micah had discovered me, but the truth had also damaged everything he thought he understood about his family. I did not try to force myself into his life. I told him I would answer any question he asked and meet again whenever he was ready. Before we left, he asked whether I had other children. I have 3, I said. 2 sons and a daughter. 2 sons? 1 biological. 1 I've raised since he was 7. Micah nodded but did not ask anything else. When I brought him home for the first time, Violet hugged him immediately. Blake shook his hand and then pulled him into a quick embrace. Daisy asked whether having another brother meant she would receive an extra birthday present every year. Nolan smiled. Don't worry. She asks everyone that. Micah laughed. For one evening, the situation almost felt manageable. We ate dinner and compared photographs. Blake and Micah discovered they both hated olives and liked the same old action movies. Daisy asked too many questions, and Violet became emotional when Micah showed us a childhood picture. Nolan was friendly but careful. He understood better than anyone what it felt like to enter an established family and wonder where you belong. At first, Micah's discomfort appeared in small ways. If Nolan mentioned a family vacation, Micah became quiet. If Blake told a childhood story involving Nolan, Micah changed the subject. One evening, we were looking through an old photo album when Micah stopped at a picture of Nolan sitting on my shoulders. How old was he there? He asked. 8. So that was soon after he moved in? About a year later. Micah studied the picture. You look happy. I heard the accusation in his voice, but I did not understand it yet. I tried to give him time that belonged only to us. We had lunches together. I helped him look at used cars. I attended an event that mattered to him and listened when he talked about Julia and the man who had raised him. I never expected him to call me Dad. I was still a stranger connected to him by biology. Any relationship between us had to develop at his pace. But the closer Micah came to me, the more aware he became of everything Nolan already had. After Micah stormed out over the camping trip, Violet came downstairs. What happened? I told her. When I repeated the phrase real sons, her expression hardened. He said that? Yes. Does Nolan know? No. He's still at the store. She leaned against the counter. Micah is hurting. I know. But that doesn't excuse this. He wasn't asking for private time with me. He wanted Blake there and Nolan excluded. Violet shook her head. Then you made the right decision. It doesn't feel right. Because there was no painless choice. Blake came home about an hour later. We told him what had happened because Micah had included him in the proposed trip. Blake sat at the table, silent for a moment. He asked me about this last week. He said. What did he say? He asked whether I ever wanted to do something with just my biological family. What did you tell him? That Nolan is my family. Blake looked toward the hallway. I thought Micah was still trying to understand everything. I didn't realize he was planning to exclude Nolan. He's jealous, Violet said. Blake shook his head. I think he looks at Nolan and sees the childhood he believes he should have had. The words landed harder coming from Blake. Nolan had never taken Micah's place, but I understood how it looked to Micah. A boy with no biological connection to me had received my home, my time, and my love while my biological son grew up without knowing I existed. It was unfair. But Nolan had not caused it. Nolan returned carrying 2 bags of groceries. He walked into the kitchen, saw us sitting silently, and stopped. Why does everyone look like something terrible happened? Nobody's hurt, Violet said. Nolan placed the bags on the counter. Then what happened? Micah and I argued about the camping trip, I said. His expression changed. He doesn't want me there. I did not answer quickly enough. Nolan gave a short, humorless laugh. It's fine. No, it isn't. He wants time with you and Blake. I understand. He specifically wanted a trip that excluded you. Nolan looked down at the groceries. Why? I hesitated. What did he say? Nolan asked. He said he wanted time with my biological sons. Nolan went still. For a second, he looked 7 years old again, standing in the doorway of a bedroom that did not feel like his. I told him the trip wasn't happening, I said. You didn't need to do that. Yes, I did. You've only known him for 4 months. That doesn't make him less important. I didn't say it did. And it doesn't make you less important either. Nolan nodded without meeting my eyes and began putting the groceries away. He arranged cans inside the cabinet with more attention than the task required. Does he think I took his place? He asked. No one took anyone's place. That isn't what I asked. I stepped closer. I think Micah is trying to understand something that hurt him deeply. And I'm the easiest person to blame. You did nothing wrong. Nolan closed the cabinet. I know. That doesn't mean he cares. He carried the empty bags into the pantry, and stayed there long enough that I knew he was collecting himself. For Micah, the argument had been about 1 weekend. For Nolan, it reopened the question of whether biology could remove him from the family he had trusted for 11 years. I called Micah that night. He did not answer, so I sent him a message asking to meet the next day. He replied an hour later. Fine. We met at a public park near his apartment. Micah sat on a bench with his elbows resting on his knees. I sat beside him. For a while neither of us spoke. Then he asked, Did you tell everyone? I told Violet and Blake. What about Nolan? He figured it out. Micah rubbed his hands together. I wasn't trying to hurt him. You asked me to exclude him. I wanted 1 weekend. You wanted 1 weekend where I acted as though he wasn't my son. That isn't what I said. You called him not my real son. Micah stood and walked several steps away. You don't understand. Then explain it. He turned around. I found you, and you already had an entire life. I know. You have a wife, children, traditions, and photographs everywhere. Everyone has stories I wasn't part of. His voice rose, but I let him continue. Blake looks like you. Daisy acts like Violet. And Nolan got everything. What do you mean? He calls you Dad. He grew up in your house. He had holidays, family trips, and childhood stories. He isn't even related to you, but he got all of it. Nolan's father died. I know. He lost the only parent he had. And I lost you. You never had the chance to know me. That's the point. His eyes filled with tears. You were raising someone else's son while your own son was growing up without you. The sentence struck exactly where he intended. I had thought the same thing almost every night since discovering him. But guilt could not be allowed to rewrite what had happened. I did not choose Nolan instead of you. It looks the same from where I'm standing. I didn't know you existed. But you know now. Yes. And I'm still the one squeezing into whatever space is left. There is space for you. Then prove it. How? 1 weekend. You, me, and Blake. No, Nolan. I stared at him. You're asking me to hurt one son to reassure another. I'm asking you to choose me once. I choose you every time I show up and try to build a relationship with you. That isn't the same as raising me. No, it isn't. I cannot give you those years back. He looked away. But I will not take Nolan's place in this family and offer it to you as proof that you matter. Micah's expression hardened. So he wins. No one wins. He already did. I lowered my voice. I will travel with you alone. I will spend weekends with you. Blake can join us sometimes too. But I will not use Nolan's exclusion as evidence that biology outranks him. Micah wiped his face with his sleeve. You always defend him. He isn't here to defend himself. What about me? I'm standing in front of you. That isn't what I mean. I know. The anger drained out of him. I don't know how to do this, he said. Neither do I. I thought finding you would fix something. I hoped it would. But now I know exactly what I missed. There was nothing I could say that would make that untrue. Micah sat down again. I need space. I nodded. All right. You aren't going to argue? No. You aren't going to tell me I'm being unfair? You are being unfair. You're also hurt. Both are true. He gave a tired laugh. You sound like Nolan's father. I am Nolan's father. His expression closed. Maybe that's the problem. The words hurt, but I did not answer with anger. I'm your father too. I don't know if you are. Micah stood and walked away without looking back. For the next 2 weeks, he did not answer my calls. I sent 3 messages. The first said I was sorry the truth had caused him so much pain. The second reminded him that my door was open. The third simply said I was thinking about him. He replied once. I need time. Please stop pushing. So I stopped. The camping trip never happened. Blake tried to talk to Nolan, but Nolan pretended the situation did not bother him. He joked about saving money on bug spray and said he preferred sleeping in a real bed. Then I found a new tent sitting unopened in his bedroom. He had ordered it the week before the argument. I stood in his doorway holding the box. You were excited about the trip. Nolan shrugged. It was on sale. You don't have to pretend you're fine. He sat on the edge of his bed. Micah lost 18 years with you. I understand why looking at me makes him angry. He doesn't get to blame you for being loved. People blame each other for things that make even less sense. I sat beside him. You are my son. I know. Do you? He remained quiet. Most days, he finally said. One conversation had revived a fear I thought Nolan had left behind years earlier, the fear that being chosen meant he could eventually be unchosen. I placed my hand behind his neck and pulled him toward me. He resisted for half a second before leaning against my shoulder. I'm not going anywhere, I said. I know. And neither are you. He nodded. A month passed before Micah contacted me again. His message arrived late one evening. He said he was not ready to return to the house or face Nolan. He knew Nolan had not caused any of this, but understanding that did not make the anger disappear. Then he wrote, Every time I look at him, I see the father I could have had. I typed several responses and deleted them. I wanted to defend Nolan and tell Micah he was punishing the wrong person. I wanted to explain that loving one son did not reduce what I could give another. Instead, I sent the only answer that felt honest. I'm sorry. I cannot change what you lost, but I will not disappear now. He did not reply. There are 4 photographs hanging in our hallway. One from Blake's graduation. One of Nolan and Daisy at the beach. A family picture from Christmas. And one Violet took during Micah's first visit to our home. Micah and I are standing side by side, smiling awkwardly because neither of us knew how close we were supposed to stand. I am grateful he found me, but I am angry that the truth was hidden from both of us. I feel guilty for years I had no power to change, and I am afraid that refusing to reject one son may cost me another. If Micah returns, I will listen to everything he needs to say. But I will not prove my love by erasing Nolan. Nolan did not steal Micah's father, and Micah did not arrive too late to become my son. There is room for both of them in my life. Right now, one is afraid he can be replaced, and the other believes he already was.